Hello and welcome to Developers Den by Newton School. I am 𝐏𝐚𝐲 𝐀𝐟𝐭𝐞𝐫 I'm a front-end developer, and in today's video we are going to continue our UI component series. Today we'll be creating a component that you use every day, everywhere, and these are buttons. You see buttons of different sizes, different colors, different use cases, buttons with animations on them and whatnot. So if you want to learn how to make those, do watch this video. I'll be covering everything. I'll be covering how to pass props, I'll be covering how to pass refs to the button and use those on your website. So if you haven't liked the video yet, do like it. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, do subscribe it. And before starting, a big thanks to Newton School for helping me make this video. Newton School is a platform where you can learn coding, you can get a job, and you don't have to pay anything till you get a job. So thanks to Newton School for that. Let's get started with making buttons for our website. So let me give you a quick demo of what we are going to build in today's video. As you can see, we are from the heading, we are going to create button. So we have various types of buttons in our application, right? Some could be primary buttons, some could be secondary button, and some could be tertiary buttons based on where you want to use it. It's a good practice that you create fixed buttons for your overall website or your project so that there is design consistency. As you can see, this is the primary button, this is the secondary button, and this is the tertiary button. All these three buttons are completely reusable. You just have to import it with just a 1 or 2 lines of code. You can pass the props such as use icon, position of the icon, and the type of the button, whether it is primary, secondary, and so on. And you can see the functionalities here as well. You can pass any function and those will be called whenever you click on this button. As you can see, I am click, nothing is happening, I am click. So these are the kind of functions that you can pass. Any function that you want, you can pass on these buttons, and you can reuse these buttons in your application. So let's get started with the coding part for creating these buttons. Now that you have seen the demo and what we are going to build, let's get started with the coding part. So this is in continuation with my previous video where we created a dropdown. So I'll open the same repository in my VS Code editor. You can use any editor that you want. I can increase the size that you'll see better. I'll just quickly show you what we have right now. npm start. So how did I created this? If you haven't watched the previous video and you want to start from scratch, just go to your terminal and create a different React app. So open your terminal, go to your destination folder. I'll increase the size again. So you just have to go to a destination folder, for example, the desktop, and there you have to write npx create React app, and whatever name you want to give. So suppose I want to create buttons, right? So I can say buttons, and this will create a React application for me. So create React app is a package that gives you a template, you can say, for your React application. All the developers use this for faster development, but since we are creating a series and we are going to create a lot of UI components, I already have a React application which I'm calling as UI library. And in the previous video, we built this beautiful dropdown. If you haven't watched the previous video, do watch this, where you learn how you can create this reusable dropdown for your application. Now what we will do, we'll go to our application and we will remove this dropdown from here. Today we are going to create buttons. So I'll just save this. I'll remove all the extra code. If you're not getting what I'm doing, don't worry. I'm just removing the unused code from here. Perfect. Now you can see we have a complete blank canvas where we are going to create different types of button that I just showed you in the demo. So what kind of background styles do I have right now? So if you haven't watched the previous video, you can watch there. But just to give you a gist, I'll show you. We have a variables file where I'm keeping the hash value of all the colors. You can see the hex value of background, blue, dark, faded gray. Why I'm using variable for my colors? So that I can use this particular variable wherever I need. I don't have to remember this hex value every time. And I have imported this inside my app file. And similarly, I'm using IBM Plex Mono font from Google Fonts. It's a free font that you can use for your projects. You can use any different font that you want. Let's get started then. So inside my components, I will create another folder and I will call this as buttons. Now, basically there we are going to create three types of buttons. So in any UI that you see, be it a big website, be it a small website, it's a good practice that you stick to fixed types of buttons. So I'm going to create three types of button. One is primary, other is secondary, and third one is tertiary. So what I'll do is, as usual, my folder structure is like this only. I give the name of the folder as whatever component I'm building, and then the entry file is index.js. And I'm using a extension called snippets. So what that gives me is if I just have to write RAFCE, and this will create a React functional component and export it as well. So I'll call this as button only. So okay, I'll rename this as well because at a time we are going to use only one button. So that's it. You can see this is button. So inside my app folder, I will just import it here. Button. Perfect. I'll save it. Now you can see this button is here. What we are going to do is now we are going to style this button in our own way, that however we want. So
Also, I'll create a CSS file. I'll call this as button.css. CSS. Perfect. Now, I'll import this CSS file here. I'll increase the size further so that you can see. I'll remove this. I'll close the terminal. We don't need it. Okay. So now I'll say import my CSS file. So import my button.css. Great. So now I just have to write one more thing. So we are going to, as I told you, that we are going to create three types of buttons. So inside my data, I'll create one more file. So what data is? Data is a constant folder where I keep the constant value of all the strings that I'm going to use in my application. So what happens? Sometimes you misspell something and then you encounter a bug. It's hard to debug. So it's a good practice that you store all your strings in variables so that you can use whenever you want. So I'll say for button.js, and here I'll close this again. I'll say export const. So this is just an array, and this is button underscore types. Sorry, it's just an object, button types. So this object will have primary, and this is the key, and the value will be like this only, primary. So what will happen now? If I'll say button types dot primary, this string will be accessible so that I don't misspell it, and the spelling is constant throughout my application. Next, second one is secondary. Cool. So this is secondary, and the final one is tertiary. Cool. I hope the spelling is correct. Tertiary. Great. Then I have exported it. Now what we will do is we are going to style it accordingly. Now for div, it depends that what kind of button I am creating. So therefore the class name will be accordingly. So instead of directly passing a string, what I'm going to do is I'll use a literal. So for this you have to give a curly braces first, then the backticks, and inside this, if you write $sign and curly braces, you can write variables here. Now what I'll do is, here are props. So whenever I'll call this, so what these props are, whatever prop you pass to your component, those are accessible from this prop. So suppose inside my application file, sorry, app.js file, here I'm calling the button, right? So I can call this as type is equal to type. We can just say button types dot primary, secondary, or tertiary. These are the three button types. So first one is primary. I'll copy three buttons. Second one is secondary, and third one is tertiary. So second one will be secondary, and the third one will be tertiary. Perfect. Now if you'll see, there should be, okay. So if I go to my button file here, index.js, inside the button, I can say that, so I'll use destructuring here. So destructuring is a part of JavaScript where you just have to write it like this: const type is equal to props. So what this will do is this will pick out the type from all the properties that I'm getting. So you could have written it like this as well: props dot type. Those are the same thing. Now what I'll say, that if my type is equal to button types dot primary, or instead what we can do is, instead we will have to write so many cases here, that whether the button type is primary or secondary or tertiary. So what we can do is, I'll completely remove this, and I'll say get button class. It's very simple, get button class, and I'll call this function. So we don't have a function right now, so I'll say const get button class. So this is a function that we have. Now this will return a string which will be the class name for my button, whether it is primary, whether it is secondary, or whether it is tertiary. Now I'll say that if or we can just write a switch statement here, switch type. Now this type will, so switch is an iterator that we use for case statement. Suppose, and how we write it, that case. Now first case is button types dot primary. Now if this is the case, then just return a string called primary. Return a string called, let's say, primary button, primary btn. Save this. Okay, we have to give a colon here. Save this. Now second case is obviously case button types dot secondary. Now in this case, we'll have to return secondary button, and finally for default we can return tertiary button. Perfect. Now this will give me the class for my button. So if you'll see here, if I'll refresh it, there are three buttons, and each of this will have a different class name. So you can go open your console and you can go to your elements, and by this selector, if you select the first button, you can see the class name is primary button, the second button is class name is secondary button, and the third name is class name is tertiary button. So I'm not giving the class name here itself. I am calling a function based on whatever type I'm going to need. Suppose if I open any website, let's say if I open cred, for example. So if I open cred, then here you can see that this is the primary button they are using, this is the tertiary button they are using, and so on. So we are not going to write a different button component every time. We can just pass one prop called type, and we can reuse the same component. So this is how we do it. Now inside my button, the second thing that I need from my prop is button text. So whatever button text we have, I'm going to write it here. So btn, inside the curly braces, I can say btn txt. Perfect. Now we don't have any button text right now. So what we can do is we can just go to app.js and give some button text. Here I'll say btn text. The first button text we can give it as, let's say, developer. The second button text for secondary button is den, and the tertiary we can give as btn text. We can give it as like plus subscribe. So these are the three buttons that we are going to create, right? If I'll refresh it, you can see btn text is not defined. Okay, there is some spelling mistake. So let me close this. Let me close all of these first. And now if I'll go to my button dot index.js, you can see there is some spelling mistake. Now it's fine. So you can see the first button is here developer, second button is here den, and the third button is here as well, like plus subscribe. Although the CSS is not very good right now, I'll fix this. So perfect. Now apart from this, I also want one default class to be here. The default class will be obviously button, and I'll copy this. So there and there. So primary button plus button, these two classes will be there on my primary button. Secondary btn and button will be on my secondary button. Tertiary btn and button will be on my third button. So let's start styling it. So the first thing that I'll style is button, of course. So for this, I want it to have a margin first of all. So I'll say give it some padding and margin. So I'll say margin of from top and bottom, I want there to be 6 pixel margin, and from left to right, I want it to have 0 pixel margin. And similarly, now what we can do is we can go to our app file first of all to style it a little better, and I can do something here. So inside my app, I'll say I'll create a div, and I'll copy all the buttons inside this only. Command X, Command V, save it. So I can call this as button wrapper. So that I can style it accordingly. Inside my button wrapper, if I go here inside my app.css, I'll just paste this button wrapper class, and I'll say display as flex, and flex direction as column. Perfect. Now you can see we have 3 buttons, and these all are separated in different columns. So this is it. It looks good now. So now in my button file, so for button, the next important property is obviously cursor pointer. So whenever you see a button, and if the cursor is like this, it's obvious that you have to click it, right? But nothing is happening because we haven't passed any function yet. So perfect. This is the base class for all my buttons. Now the next thing that I need is the style for my primary button. Now for primary button, what I'll do, and so for my primary button, what I will do is I'll say background color as variable, not background, I'll say blue dark. So this is the background color for my primary button, and obviously I'm going to style it better. It won't look like this only. So what I'll say is also all my buttons have to be in the center. So I'll say display as flex. So whatever the content I'm writing inside a button needs to be in the center, right? So I'll say display as flex, justify content as center, and align items as center. So what these 3 lines does is every time you want to center something inside a div, just copy these 3 lines there, and everything that you have will be in the center. You can see developer is in the center, then is in the center, like and subscribe was already in the like it's taking the entire width, so it doesn't look like it's in the center. So now I want to give it some padding. So what kind of padding I want? From top and bottom I want 12 pixel, and from left and right I'll say 24 pixel. So this looks good. Also I want a little border margin here, rounded corners, so I'll say border radius, we can say 6 pixel. Perfect. Yeah, the button looks good. So the next thing is, obviously I want the text to be visible here, so I can say font, sorry, the color property will set the color for your text, whatever is inside. So I'll say white. Perfect. So it looks good. Also now, since this is a primary button, we can make the text a little bolder. So what we can do is, I can say font weight we can give it 600. Looks good. And then some letter spacing as well. I want there to be some space between each of the letters, so I'll say letter spacing to be 1.2 pixel. Now you can see it looks like a proper button. So this is the primary button that you can use everywhere. Also, now one more thing. Now, suppose I want there to be some icon, right? I want some icon to be there. So what I can do is, so for this I use one very popular website, which is Tabular Icons. Tabular Icons here. So this is a free website that you can use. Open source icons are there. You can use any icon that you like. So it's not loading for some reason. Okay, perfect. So which mainly which type of icon you want, it all depends on what kind of button you are using. So let us say, suppose I want right now, you can pass the SVG for your button, right? So suppose I want chevron, sorry, arrow left, arrow right or left, arrow left or right, arrow right, RIGST. So this is the arrow right that we need, this one. So I'll just click on this and I'll copy the SVG. Now what we'll do is, we'll go to our app file here. There should be some background noise. A plane is passing. We can wait till then. So I'll start once the noise is clear. Cool. So suppose it's still there. We can wait for a few seconds. I think we can go on now. So suppose I can say that I want a but icon only for the primary button. So I can say icon. Now what I'll do in icon is, so for icon, you can just pass a property that you can just pass the SVG for this icon. So I just paste it and I'll save it. Now icon, I'm passing it from here only. So now you will see that since I'm passing an icon only for the primary button and not for the secondary and tertiary button, I'll have to find some way to only show the icon if it is available. Otherwise your button will give error. So the next thing is icon. So I have destructured my icon from the props that I'm getting, and inside the button text, what I'll do is, I'll just write it like this, whatever icon I have. Now you can see, since this icon is also of the same color, it's not visible. I'll just go to my app.js, and here I'll change this to 6F, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6F is white color. Now you can see we have the icon, but since for these two buttons nothing is available, it's not showing. I will have to cover this case. So as you can see, if the icon is visible, then only it will be shown to your button. And perfect. Now your button is showing if you're passing it. Your icon is showing on the button if you're passing it as a prop. Now what do we have to do is, we have to uh, do something else. Now what if I want the icon to be on the left side, right? Icon to be on the left side. So for this, I'll say, in my app, I'll pass one more prop here. Next to my icon, I'll say icon position. If it is left, let us say left. If it is left or it is right, based on the position, we can place the icon. So inside my button, I can say icon position. Now, icon position. Now, if the icon position, so what we'll do is, we will open a curly braces so that we can write JavaScript inside HTML. So I'll say that I'll check if the icon is present. So this icon and will tell me that whether my icon is present or not, and then only it will execute whatever is written on the right hand side of the AND operator. So I'll say if icon is present and icon position is equal to left. If this is true, then only show my icon. Perfect. Otherwise, similarly, I'll copy this and I'll write it here as well. I'll say that if the position is right, RIGST, then only show it to the right side of the button text. Now if you'll see, the icon is at the left side. Similarly, if I'll pass this as right, so if from the app, if I pass this as right, RIGST, then it will be shown at the right side of the button. So you can see how reusable this button is right now by just passing a few props. So this is it. The primary button looks like this. And now let's implement the function, the design for the secondary button. So secondary button is very easy. I'll go to my button and I'll say secondary BTN. So for secondary button, I want everything to be like this only. So I'll copy it. But instead of white color, I want it to be of blue dark, and similarly I want a border color. So I want a border of 1 pixel solid and the color should be blue dark. Perfect. Now you can see this is the secondary button. So if you go to any of the coding like library, Material UI, or Chakra UI or any UI library, you'll see these are the button types that they have. So this is the primary button, this is the secondary button. So this looks perfect. Now what we have to do is we have to style the tertiary button. So for tertiary button, we don't need a border or something. So I'll say tertiary BTN. We don't need a border or anything. Neither we need a we do need a padding so that there is some spacing. So I'll just copy this style. I'll paste it and I'll remove the extra one. We don't need a border. We do need a font weight and we need the color as well, but we don't need the border radius. Perfect. So this is the tertiary button. So these are the 3 buttons that you want in your entire project. The one is primary button, the one is another one is secondary button, and finally tertiary button. Based on the use case, you can use these 3 buttons. Now what we'll do is we'll implement some style for the hover property. Suppose if I'm hovering over the primary button, I can just revert the colors so that the user can see that something is happening. So what I can do is I can say background color to be so what we'll say, I'll say transform and I'll say scale to 1.2. So that's it. So suppose if I hover over it, the button will look a little larger. 1.2 is a lot, so I'll say 1.02. You can see it is expanding a little so that you can see the behavior on hovering. Now similarly for secondary button, you can implement some different action, you can implement some different style so that whenever you hover over the button, you see that it is clickable. So it's a good practice. So what we can do is I can say background color to be let us say variable. Again a plane is passing, so we can wait for some seconds. Great. So we can say the variable color is background. So it's already background. So what we can do is we can say variable color to be white. Now you can see when I hover over it, the color is changing and it looks like that this button is clickable. Now similarly for the tertiary button, again I can say for tertiary button, I'll say for whenever I hover over the button, just do one thing, that transform it, scale it by let's say 1.02 again, and this looks good. So all three buttons looks like they are clickable. Now how am I going to pass a property that whenever I click on something, it should be like that particular function should be executed? So for that I just have to go to my app.js and I'll say on button click on btn click. So this is a function, let's say. Now what does this function do? Let's say it will just console.log I am clicked. So also write the const here. So these are the arrow functions that are right. I prefer writing arrow functions because these are very easy to write and it looks good. Plus they have some own benefits as well, which we can read in the ECMA 6 that came out in 2015. So I'll copy this, and now you guessed it right. We just have to pass it as a prop. So like this, and finally like this. Perfect. Now we have 3 function, like we are passing the on button click as a prop to the button. So what we'll do is we will now destructure it and we can use it here. So on click, I'll just do it. Now what if we haven't passed something? So for this we'll use tertiary check. Now if this prop is present, then execute this function, otherwise just console.log, otherwise just console.log, and nothing is happening. Perfect. Now also make it 3 equal operators so that the lint won't give error. Now so you can see what I'm doing is I'm checking if this particular prop is present, then only call that function, otherwise just console log that nothing is happening. So if you'll see, I'll open the console here. So for this, if I click this, you can see I am click. So I am click was logged 3 times. Now what I'll do is, for my secondary button, I'll remove this, and now we'll see what is happening. We'll clear this, we'll refresh this. Now for primary button, I am click is here. For secondary button, since we did not pass any on click function, you can see nothing is happening. For tertiary button, it's here. Now I'll just show you how the icon will look like in all the other 2 buttons as well. So it will, you can imagine it will just be shown here or here based on what position you are passing. Now we just have to style it a little bit so that it will look good on my video. So what I'll do is I'll just create another heading here. I can just copy it from my drop down. So I'll go to my drop down component and I'll copy this from here. So this heading, and inside my app.js I'll paste it. Don't worry, you don't have to do this. I'm doing this so just so that my video looks good. The button component part is done. You can use it wherever you want. So next to my this, I'll go to my app.css, and also I'll say flex direction to be column. Perfect, looks good. And I'll copy the style for my heading. So from dropdown.css, I'll copy this particular style. Now I'll show you what I was doing. Inside my app.css, I'll paste this. Perfect. Now button developers done. So it looks good. So just ignore the last part that I did. I was just adding this heading here. So you can see we have created 3 buttons that are completely reusable, that are of different types. You can just change the color, you can just change the icon, you can change the text and everything. And you can use these buttons in your own project. Hope you learned something in this video. And if you did, do make sure that you have liked the video, make sure that you have subscribed to the channel. And if you have any doubt, do comment it out. If you have any video request, do comment it out. I'll help you out for sure. So let's see you in the next video. Also, again, a big thanks to Newton School for helping me making this video. Thank you and see you in the next video. Bye.